Okay, I'd like to welcome the Maritime Transportation System Safety and Security Panel and introduce our moderator, Cosmo Perrone. Cosmo Perrone is known to a lot of you and a pal of the industry for quite a number of years. He's a principal now of a business that's similar to mine. We both have clever names for our businesses. His is Cosmo Perrone and Associates. And previously, you know him as he served as the Director of Security for the Port of Long Beach, California. The Board of Commissioners at Long Beach appointed the former Boeing and McDonnell Douglas Security and Fire Director to that port position back in March of 2005. And he really set a gold standard for port security in the state of California here. As the head of that security division, he oversaw more than 80 security personnel, including harbor patrol officers, and directed the 24-hour patrols, anti-terrorism programs, and security coverage for the 3,000-acre port complex. He served on the California Maritime Security Council, and are you still on the national?
Yes.
And he's still appointed and serves on the National Maritime Security Advisory Committee. So please join me in welcoming Cosmo Perrone.
I can assure you that I am just as surprised as you are that I'm here on this panel. I received a call from Norman Tuesday afternoon as I was driving up from Los Angeles, and I think he caught me in a weak moment, and I happened to say yes, that I would fill in. The way we decided to proceed is I will introduce the panelists and identify their focus, and then we'll go back and identify each one's bio as they make the presentations. Everybody okay with that? Great. So the panelists are Donna Nincic, a PhD professor and director of ABS School of Maritime Policy and Management, the California Maritime Academy, California State University. Key focus is going to be on piracy and criminal trends in the maritime shipping. And then we have Hank Glauser, principal investigator, global security at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. He is going to talk about the Portness Project, offshore trade portals, maritime nuclear detection initiative. And the third panelist is John Ostrander, old friend, maritime security coordinator at the California Maritime Academy. Focus is going to be on Maritime Safety and Security Training Center, the update and the Costa Concordia lessons learned. And finally, but not least, we'll have Rodney Slaughter, Cal Fire Office of the State Fire Marshal, and he's going to talk about the statewide marine firefighting. So let's start with, I got it right, Donna. And let's see, the bio is very lengthy, numerous publications, and she is professor and director of the ABS School of Maritime Policy and Management at the California Maritime Academy, State California University. She received her doctorate in political science and international relations from New York University, great school, and has held previous positions at the University of California, Davis, the Hoover Institution, and the U.S. Department of Defense. Her research focuses on maritime security, particularly piracy and terrorism, very pointed subject. Her recent publications include The Challenge of Maritime Terrorism, Threat Identification, WMD, and Regime Response at the Journal of Strategic Studies. Maritime Security is Energy Security, Current Threats and Challenges in Luft G and Conan and EDS, Energy Security, Challenges for the 21st Century, and numerous other publications. So many, we'll just assume she has written everything. So here we go. Donna, you're up.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart and I think very important for the maritime industry. I'm sort of an outlier at a lot of these conferences because I get to do kind of the high altitude overview of what the security threats are out there, and then I get to sit down and finish and turn it over to everybody else to solve the problems that the security threats pose to us. So that's pretty much what I'll be doing today. I'm going to be focusing on 3 areas of strategic threat that face the maritime industry. These are not the only threats out there, but sort of the focus I've chosen to bring to our conversation today. I'll be starting off with maritime piracy, looking at some of the current trends in maritime piracy globally, and going through very briefly how that affects the maritime industry. Fascinating shift between 2011 and 2012, and also we're seeing an additional shift, we think, between 2012 and 2013 that's worth bringing to all of our attention. I'll then turn to maritime terrorism, sort of an overview of what the maritime terrorist landscape looks like at the moment, shifting in very interesting ways as well. And then lastly, turning to maritime criminality. So these are criminal activities out there that aren't pirates, that aren't terrorists, but still represent a significant challenge for the maritime industry. And then I will end up kind of tying all of these together and trying to go from that very high altitude overview, bringing it down to what does this mean, after all, for the state of California. Some statistics, okay? We're tracking the maritime piracy statistics since 2002. And the reason we look at 2002 is that's about the first year that the statistics became really, really reliable. So if you look at trend lines since then, you know, the exact numbers may not be the exact numbers of actual pirate attacks, but we're fairly confident that this is what the trend looks like. And you'll notice that we had a high in the early period of the 2000s, down to a very substantial drop, 2005, 6, and 7, then a significant jump up, okay, in the fairly recent current period, and this is the big story right now. If anybody is tracking maritime piracy at all at the moment, all of the headlines out there are dramatic drop in maritime piracy in 2012, okay, and just to give a little bit of brief context here, because it will be important for some of the challenges I'm speaking about in a few minutes. Very briefly, this period of piracy, 2002, 2003, whoops, that should be 2004, not 2993, sorry about that. This piracy here is mostly located in Asia. This is largely Strait of Malacca, South China Sea area. And then in the current period, we have the big shift to Africa. And most of this is Somali piracy, almost all of it, actually. And then the big drop, of course, in 2012, which I will discuss in just a moment. So zooming in on some of the key hot spots, you know, where most of the maritime piracy occurs. In the recent years, we really focus on 3 areas. The Somalia area of operation, which is the Gulf of Aden into the Indian Ocean, moving up into the Persian Gulf area. Gulf of Guinea, okay, which is one of our new emerging hot spots. Doesn't get, in my opinion, nearly the amount of press and attention that it deserves. And then, of course, the Strait of Malacca, or the Malacca region, as I call it here, because that is traditionally where we have faced the largest problems with maritime piracy. And if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'd like to just draw your attention to some of the key developments we've seen in the last few years. I've arbitrarily chosen to do the attack figures from about 2008, and you'll note the substantial increase in Somali piracy from 2008 up until 2011. Okay, actually since about 2005-6 or so, pirate attacks increased every year in the Somalia area, okay, moving out farther and farther and farther every year. And then all of a sudden, the drop from 2011 into 2012 was just absolutely astounding. Okay, as we were watching 2012 emerge, we knew it was going to be a lower year, but nobody was really anticipating, you know, how significant the drop would be. I would be happy to talk with anybody during the break or during lunch about why that happened. I love talking about it. Okay, but the really fast answer is 3 things. Item number 1 is the task forces are doing their job job, and they're doing them very, very well. Number two, and this is where the shipping industry can take a lot of credit for this, best management practices we know are working in that area and are, while they are very expensive, I've got some notes on that, they are extremely effective. And then reason number three are a number of developments on land. There have been a number of significant land-based operations against Somalia pirate bases, as well as terrorist bases which were protecting some of the pirate areas. And the French got a little bit aggressive in about September, October, and just decided to start bombing a number of pirate ships, okay, that were actually based in Somalia. So a number of things converge. And also, last point on that is prosecutions are beginning to take the bite as well. Okay, that the illegal industry is beginning to go after pirates, and we're actually, instead of doing catch and release, actually putting them in jail globally. So the substantial drop here, to the point where a lot of people are wondering, okay, well, is piracy over in Somalia? So hang on to that thought. If we turn now to the other side of Africa, the Gulf of Guinea area, okay, this is, there's a bigger story here than the numbers would suggest. First of all, anybody working with pirate statistics knows that while we are fairly confident of our reliance on the numbers off of Somalia, we have much less confidence over the reporting in the Gulf of Guinea, and estimates are that the pirate attacks in the Gulf of Guinea could be up to 10 times underreported. We just don't have the same level of confidence there. Secondly, 33 to 37 doesn't look like a huge jump, okay, but if you look at Nigeria alone, 10 attacks in 2011 and almost tripled in 2012, and I'm going to give you a few 2013 numbers. So the numbers are very low off of Nigeria, but they represent a very disturbing trend. And then lastly, Malacca, 2005, 6, 7, 8, Malacca piracy dropped almost nothing. When I say Malacca here, I'm not talking specifically about just the physical Strait of Malacca. I call it the Malacca region because I'm including in this number all of the Indonesia piracy, all of the Malaysian piracy, and kind of, at both larger ends of the area. And note that Malacca, the Malacca region, and this is not being commented on much at all, the Malacca region, okay, for 2012 actually saw more pirate attacks than the Somalia area of operation did. Okay, and this is important for us. Okay, first of all, a lot of West Coast trade for the United States and California comes from Asia. Much of that does go through the Malacca area, but the success rate of pirates in the Malacca region is far, far, far higher than it is in the Somalia area. We focus so much on Somalia that we forget that fewer than half of pirate attacks in Somalia are actually successful. That is, culminating in an actual capture of a vessel. So what does this mean, and why does this all matter? I'd like to point to a few kind of important developments that I'm highlighting just from these basic statistics right now. First of all, while we're seeing this dramatic drop in piracy in Somalia, we don't want to forget that even though we're seeing this drop in Somali piracy, there's still very, very substantial costs to it. The human costs are staggering. I've chosen just to highlight the hostages held. Yes, we have far fewer hostages, almost half the number of hostages held in 2012 that we had held in 2010, but over 500 seafarers held hostage is still far, far, far too many. So the human toll is significant, and the impact on the families of these seafarers that are held hostages are also very, very significant as well. The economic costs are staggering off of the coast of Somalia. I think most of us are familiar with the reports that are put out by Chatham House and One Earth Future that have detailed the costs of piracy off of Somalia. Fascinatingly enough, okay, if you look at, these are costs overall. Okay, if you look at what's the most expensive cost to the shipping industry, it's actually the need to increase speed of your vessel as you are going through that area of operation. That is the single most significant cost of Somalia piracy. The military costs, okay, these are the task forces. okay, price tag associated with that. Security guards and equipment, it costs about, on average, if you choose to carry a security team on board your vessel, it's about a $50,000 price tag for you, okay, for a one-way transit. Okay, so the costs of arming your vessel with a security team are significant for those who choose to do it. Many ships opt to reroute, okay, your insurance costs. You have insurance both for the vessel itself, and you are also buying an insurance policy for the ransom. This can run anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000 again per transit. And so the price tag, really ramps up for the ship and the shipping industry itself. You have costs of labor, because your crew is going to demand higher wages to operate in that area. Ransoms, although they reach a staggering $9 million plus per vessel in recent years, are actually a fraction of the total cost of Somali piracy, prosecutions and imprisonment, and then other counter-piracy operations. Obviously, some of these numbers are going to go down as piracy goes down, but some of these numbers will not go down. Okay, the cost of the task forces, et cetera, those are going to remain high. So as long as there are piracy problems off of the coast of Somalia, there will be a significant economic price tag associated with that, and a lot of that does devolve down to the shipping industry. So I'd like to turn now to the second, that actually should be a 2, not a 1, I apologize for that. The second important development that I'd like to bring our attention to is what I'm calling the pivot, okay, the pivot away from piracy in Somalia to the Nigeria-Malacca region. Nigeria, okay, significant oil importance for the United States, significant numbers of security concerns also in Nigeria as well, and noting that in February, okay, of just this, a few weeks in February of this year, we already had 16 attacks off of the Nigerian coast, 27 total in 2012. This looks like it will be a very busy year for Nigerian piracy, and again, Nigeria is a major oil supplier for the United States. Malacca, key strategic trade route, okay, 13 attacks, okay, this year alone in the Malacca region. This is compared with 1 pirate attack off of Somalia in all of 2013. So it does look like we're seeing a shift in piracy towards areas of greater economic importance actually for the United States. And then always concerns about linkages with maritime terrorism. The fast conclusion on maritime terrorism is that it's been very quiet. Since the Al-Qaeda linked attack on the M-Star, really haven't seen a whole lot that's been tremendously significant. But the big concern is there are a number of terrorist groups operating in these pirate area of operations, and we're always concerned about the possibility of cooperation, et cetera. A pirate attack on a vessel is one thing, a terrorist attack on a vessel is quite another thing. And we've got a number of terrorist groups operating in say, the Nigeria area. Boko Haram, okay, not interested in maritime yet. MEND continues to be very interested in maritime. And then there's now a splinter group off of Boko Haram, and Saru, which is targeting specifically foreigners. Okay, so the Nigeria terrorist landscape is not looking very promising, and some of that may turn its attention to shipping. And then the last big concern with maritime terrorism is always the lone operator, the one who is not associated with a particular terrorist group. Those are the hardest to find and the hardest to catch. Impact on California, I'm going to go through this very quickly because I'm already burning up the time that I have allocated to me. A terrorist attack in California would have very significant implications for the maritime domain, even if it occurred within the supply chain, not on the ports directly. A global attack anywhere, if it hit a major hub port, would severely impact the California maritime economy. And then just want to point out that it doesn't even have to be an actual attack, okay, that could cause serious economic slowdown. In 2002, a war game was run, a simulated war game was run, where a radiological device was simply discovered in a rail car. Okay, and because of that and the linkages to the supply chain, linkages to ports, we actually had to shut down most of the major ports in the United States. And according to the war game simulation, it took almost 3 weeks for all of the ports to reopen. So the implications for the economy were staggering because of that. Okay. And the last point I'd like to make is it's not all about just the pirates and just the terrorists. There is a web of criminality that we are beginning to identify. A lot of times what we're talking about, it's the same people. The pirates do gun running, okay, when the pirate season is low. There are a lot of pirates who are kind of, flirting with the terrorists. A number of them are involved in human trafficking. Quite a few of them are involved in the drug trade, okay? So a lot of times we're really talking about the same groups, and even if there's not a full overlap, there are linkages between them. This is a map I like to show, showing criminal linkages. The blue lines you see are the major drug trafficking routes. You've got your pirate areas, and then you've got your terrorist havens as well. So you begin to see the overlap. This is actually the one I like to show a bit more. The drug trade routes, okay, again, every time it's in the white space, that's the ocean, okay, which means that it's maritime. So the global drug trade is a maritime trade. And then next to it, I've got the major oil routes, simply to show that they're using the same trade routes that everybody else is, okay? And then lastly, putting it all together, you've got the cocaine trade routes, the heroin trade routes, illegal immigrant trade routes, and then women and children trade routes. Okay, this is the illegal trafficking in women and children. And again, okay, California is right up here somewhere, and you can see the convergence here. Okay, and the big concern is terrorist exploitation of these existing trade routes in illegal criminal activity. So the conclusion, very fast conclusion, is, in my opinion, we should not be thinking about what do I do about pirates, or what do I do about terrorists, or what do I do about drug running, or human trafficking, okay, or the weapons trade, and how that might affect me as a port, a shipper, etc. We really should begin to think about this all as an interconnected web because of the number of convergences and overlaps we see in so many of the activity. So our challenge is to engage these threats as an interwoven whole rather than separate, discrete, and distinct concerns. So I thank you for your time, and I will be happy to answer any questions at the end of the panel or during the break or lunch. Thank you very much.
As part of my agreement with Norman, I reserved the right to ask questions throughout all this, but I will wait till the end. But I do want to make a comment. This is the most insightful presentation I've seen on piracy, and I've seen many in Washington and elsewhere. So much thanks again.
Thank you very much.
The next panelist is Hank Glauser, Principal Investigator for Global Security, Lawrence Livermore Lab, National Lab. Currently holds a matrix position with the Global Security Directorate as Principal Investigator for the Portness Project. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
I'll get to that in a minute.
All right. Under the counterterrorism program, Mr. Glauser received his BS degree in environmental studies from San Jose State University and his MBA from Haas School of Business at Berkeley. I agree, one of the top 10 graduate schools in the United States. As a U.S. Navy veteran, Mr. Glauser served in Operation Earnest Will and Desert Storm and joined Lawrence Livermore National Lab in 1992. He has 25 years of experience supporting national security efforts in numerous management positions, including Deputy Associate Director for Operations and the Physical Sciences Directorate. Mr. Glauser, you're up.
Thank you very much, Cosmo. Thanks. Cutting into the time here. So I got 10 minutes. I'm going to run through this very quickly. I'm going to take advantage of an educated audience and throw up some issues that I don't need to explain a lot of. Okay. Any one of these issues that I'm going to show you affects the maritime industry. Individually, they are significant. They've prompted a lot of debate and a lot of action. Collectively, they prompted the laboratory to initiate the Portunus project and research. Okay. So this gives you a context. And I'm going to throw these up there. It's not meant to depress everybody, but it may. Okay, so the transition of international shipping fleet, what we're talking about here is the containerization of freight, ultra-large container ships in the inventory, current glut in capacity. Panama Canal expansion, new port facilities in Mexico and Canada. Port improvement process, what it takes to improve a port, how much that costs, and what the investment strategies are on those ports. Labor relations issues, port efficiencies in the U.S. when compared to other Pacific Rim ports and the lack thereof. The threat of terrorism, and I couldn't agree again with Donna more. Capabilities, methods, targets, impacts of those threats. The development of maritime domain awareness technologies that are emerging. Landlocked ports versus port expansion pressures. Invasive species threats, ballast water treatment requirements. Environmental impacts and costs of dredging. And this one I do want to touch on a little bit more. This is part of the lessons learned. This is economics of terrorism and defense strategies. During the Cold War, okay, one of the reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed was they overspent on their security, okay? And what happens in the U.S. is similar in that it costs very little for a terrorist to put a bomb on their vest and bring it to the U.S. It costs a tremendous amount of money to protect against that eventuality. The economics of security works against us, so we have to develop a security regime that actually makes us a little stronger. Okay. Current state of U.S. commercial waterways and transportation issues, fuel efficiencies, traffic, air pollution. So the question is, how does one project put all that together? Okay, so see, I forwarded here and I didn't forward it there. Okay, so what is Portunus? Portunus is a security research project that looks into various technologies to provide offshore inspection of seaborne trade and private craft. Okay. It is one of many strategies to combat terrorism. The ports, or the capability itself varies in size based on the risk level, okay? So right now it might be one dock, one crane. Later on, as weapons proliferate in the world, it may be a little more, okay, to an offshore port complex. These things are located about 20 miles offshore because we want to protect U.S. coastal areas and economic zones from those weapons. They're initially set up to inspect, but later to process shipping. And the technology can be used in spin-off for aquaculture, energy exploration, desal, commercial private real estate development, and defense, of course. Okay. Okay, by design, okay, there are 3 sections to a Portunus port: an international side, security customs inspection, domestic side. I'm going to throw up these numbers and they're going to shock you a little bit, but the design capacity is to offload 18,000 TEU ships in 36 hours. Okay. Using automated guided vehicles, multiple pick cranes, logistic management programs, inspection technologies, and databasing. Okay? Different platforms are used in different locations. Those locations vary a lot due to the environmental conditions, Pacific versus Gulf versus East Coast, and the cargo that transits. Pacific Northwest has, as you said, a lot of bulk, a lot of containerization in Southern California. Okay. This is kind of an artist's conception of what an offshore platform looks like, and we're looking at something that's 20 to 30 years down the road, okay? So you have, I'm going to get to do, close your eyes, I'm bad aim with the laser. Okay, this is the international section. You can see the larger 18,000 TU class ships. They offload, goes through a security section. You do 5 regimen inspections. We're talking about human trafficking, rad nuke, chem, bio, contraband, and then a domestic section. It acts like a transshipment port. Okay. So why would anybody be interested in this? I mean, it could scare the bejesus out of people, okay? So there's 2 reasons. One is economics, the other is security. Let's go through economics first. The most efficient way to move goods across the ocean, ultra-large container ships. The most efficient way to move goods domestically, short-sea shipping, okay? The U.S. ranks low against Pacific Rim ports in efficiency. The process to upgrade the ports is, as we said, costly, politically charged, environmentally challenging. Okay, here we go, the picture in a nutshell. This is just Maersk, but you're talking about a tremendous increase in capacity between the mid-1990s and today. Alphaliner reports a 5-fold increase in greater than 10,000 TEU ships in inventory. Okay. I talked a little bit about short sea shipping, the most efficient way to move goods domestically. This is a population, your U.S. customer in the United States. 70% of the population is east of the Mississippi. Okay. This is our intercoastal waterway system. You can see a one-to-one correlation with that, okay? The further the economics of short sea shipping, I think somebody else has a nice little thing on this too, there's a tremendous advantage to using inland waterways compared to rail or truck as far as fuel efficiency and cost. Given those efficiencies, how do we do it? It happened again. So if that map were correctly oriented, okay, what you would see, okay? This is that Mac PC thing going on. So I did this presentation in San Diego a little bit, and it just kind of did the same thing. Okay, so use your imaginations. It's oriented correctly, and what you see is a lot of truck and rail traffic used. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, why is it this way? Okay, clearly the Panama Canal. Okay, it's just a bottleneck. Right now, they're planning on expanding that. Expansion is 12,500 TEU ships. Already, the shipping industry has surpassed the capacity of the Panama Canal, and they're already talking about another expansion project. Okay, it takes days to offload a 15,000 TEU ship at LA Long Beach. It takes a day for customs hold, more time for freight hold. Cargo's going by rail. It's often brought to a rail yard, decoupled, recoupled for a train bound for St. Louis, train bound for Chicago, et cetera. Bottom line, it's quicker to truck something across the country than to use more efficient means in some cases. Okay. Again, time is short, and I'm simplifying a lot. You know what I mean. Okay, so time is money too. Okay, so the other thing is, what if we did it differently? We sort everything out beforehand, take cargo off the larger ships, load it onto the smaller ships. It generates 2 to 4 ships moving simultaneously, like a hub and spoke distribution system. Cargo arrives at a port, it's already sorted. Okay? The customs hold occurs on the offshore port and doesn't occur on the beach. Okay, that's the economics. Let's take a look at some of the security issues. Okay, at some point in the future, I know it's tough to consider, but at some point in the future, terrorists may acquire a weapon of mass destruction. Okay, they don't have them today. 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 or 20, that may change. Okay, the technology is already available to them. Okay, the delivery mechanism is already available to them. The only thing they're missing is the material itself. That material can be manufactured, stolen, okay, or provided by a nation state who has the capability. Okay, so the U.S. is highly reliant on sea trade for its commerce and security, and the ports are located on a border. I mean, you know this better than me. Located on the border near large population centers. Okay, those are some of the technologies currently in use, so it gives you an idea of kind of what we're thinking, okay, in U.S. and overseas. Okay, what does this mean for the maritime industry? Okay, it's shipbuilding and repair, U.S. Jones Act, okay? This offshore port may or may not fall under the U.S. Jones Act. This is 20 miles out, okay? So this is outside U.S. territorial waters, inside U.S. economic zone, okay? Jones Act, we think, may apply. If it does, that's implication for those routes. So jobs, shipbuilding repair, U.S. merchant marine, port worker jobs. The environment, it limits dredging. You're not having to dredge the harbors for the deeper ships, okay? No invasive species threats, okay? So the ship fitting is different. That change of ballast occurs offshore. And less fuel pollution, less traffic, okay, because using more efficient means. Therefore, infrastructure, inland waterways are improved, highway maintenance is reduced, okay? Existing ports stay in operation. They use less infrastructure. They have less infrastructure investment. You don't have to retool the entire port of Los Angeles for the larger cranes. You don't have to do that 251 times or 25 times for the major U.S. ports. You have an economy of scale to maintain that technology. Okay, taxes estimated $2 billion. You're looking at everything coming into the U.S. At those numbers, what I showed before, you can look at everything without a significant freight hold. So if you look at everything, you're actually getting an increased tariff boost of $2 billion the first year because the manifest doesn't clear that says auto parts and it's actually a car. Okay. U.S. job spending back in the U.S. economy instead of sending the money overseas. The security, the protection scheme doesn't bankrupt the U.S. economy. It strengthens it because on the economic side, it's a better supply chain model. Critical infrastructure protection, this is going to get to your point. Ports and coastal population centers are protected. U.S. ports remain intact in the event of attack, and damage to the economy is minimized because the existing U.S. ports are maintained. Bottom line is goods are received faster. So I'm going to summarize with this. The laboratory is a very credible agent when we talk about science and technology, engineering, things like that, and security. We're not a credible agent when we talk about business, okay? So what we did is a few years ago, we had a competition. We brought 3 of the top 10 graduate business schools out, and they presented to a panel of DHS, Navy, and business, okay? And they told that panel what they discovered, okay? And I'm just going to give an excerpt of that presentation. And maybe not.
Like this begin this way with an understanding that this is an extremely important, very serious endeavor, number one. And number two, we want to find out at an early stage if it can be done before large-scale expenditures occur. The closest, remember I'm a professor so I could talk all day. The closest historical analog, though, that we came up with at Berkeley is actually before President Kennedy announced the Apollo program to go to the moon. He had a kitchen cabinet of scientists and engineers, and the conversation was basically, is this possible? Before I go before a microphone and announce that we're going to go to the moon, I want to know if this is an engineering problem that simply can't be solved. I don't want to make a fool of ourselves and commit our country to something that's implausible. So we see ourselves at that, more or less that juncture today with this project. We were an order of magnitude, literally a factor of 10 cheaper than we were expecting to, than we guessed we would be when we started the project. It was actually very encouraging, whether these numbers or the pre-adjusted numbers that were on the order of between $100 and maybe $400 per container. Given the value of what's in the containers, we did not see that as onerous.
Okay. Again, I'm available, just like Donna, for questions afterwards and in the lobby for a brief time. Thank you very much.
Wow. Good stuff, as my friends always say. I think you can see that there's real deep thinking going on supply chains and their entire business models. Excellent. Next up is a good friend, John Ostrander, from the Maritime Security Coordinator from the California Maritime Academy. He has a bio that's 27 pages long. I will try to summarize it quickly. He is now the Deputy Director for the Maritime Safety and Security Center, a joint effort between Chevron Richmond Refinery and the California Maritime Academy. And his duties include the Maritime Security Training Program Management, Drill and Exercise Project Management, and is the Maritime Security Lead Instructor for the Sponsored Projects and Extended Learning Department. He's been enlisted in the Coast Guard. He has worked for AT&T, worked at Lucent, and then he was commissioned in the Supply Corps of the Naval Reserve and retired with 25 years of total service. John has done a lot of stuff for us and has put together a great program at the Cal Maritime, and we all appreciate it. Here's John.
Thank you, Cosmo, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Privilege for me to be able to talk about this very exciting project. As it says, a public-private training collaboration. As a sidelight, Donna has kind of defined the problem domain with respect to the threat. Hank has defined a possible solution in terms of reducing vulnerability. What we're going to deal with is more of how do we recover and respond to a situation when the threat is real and our vulnerabilities are our weak point, and bad things do happen. We'll start with a little bit of the motivation of the Maritime Safety and Security Center. Driven by the imminent closure of the Marine Firefighting Training Facility at Treasure Island. Many of you know the Old Navy Marine Firefighting Training Center at Treasure Island, currently operated by the San Francisco Fire Department. We just recently had a situation where we had to send a bunch of trainees home because it wasn't working. So recognizing that Treasure Island was going to go out of operation, Chevron came to us a few years ago and asked if we would partner with them in a port security grant program to replace or remove that particular facility. opted to move it to Chevron Richmond Refinery, and we'll talk a little bit more about where that is with relationship to the school. One of the drivers for that activity was the fact that firefighters, those firefighters, and Rodney will speak to that a little bit, as will some of the future panels that we have today. Marine firefighters today come from our regular firefighting cadre. The marine firefighting we train for at the California Maritime Academy are for shipboard operators, personnel. So folks that are crews on merchant marine vessels, those are the folks that we typically train. We have a whole bunch of marine firefighters, but whether they be in a law enforcement organization or a local jurisdiction's fire service, who really don't know what it's like to fight a fire on board a vessel. And so we're in the process of working on that. One of the best places to do it is in Texas, at the Texas Extension School. But it's very expensive, and in these limited budgetary situations, we want to minimize the amount of travel for our trainees. It's a regional collaboration for maritime emergency management. So we're expanding it a little bit, talking about emergency management capabilities as well as firefighting, and eliminating elements of training inefficiency and overlap. The focus will be for us to identify our training requirements with regard to emergency management, maritime safety, and security, as well as that firefighting aspect. We want to leverage existing organic strengths. We're not looking to overtake the world. We're looking to partner with legitimate existing training programs to leverage them and strengthen California and California's maritime economic viability. We want to share best practices. You know, that's kind of like the last organizational effectiveness thing that we all went through. But we really mean it. We really want to be able to take the best of the best and inculcate that into our program. We want to identify delivery capacity deficiencies. Where can we not, why can we not deliver adequate training? You know, we talk about training. You know, at the California Maritime Academy, we're very good about educating in terms of concept and decision making. But what we need to train for is being able to respond. So that's a skills-based training. And that requires practice. And practice requires repetition and a place at which to be able to do that. And that's what we're hoping to get to. And we want to see a more standardized set of training requirements for the state. As an outcome, we expect that we are going to minimize training-related travel and logistics costs associated with the sending of fire training folks to places like Resolve Training in Florida or to TEACS in Texas, and be able to offer more available and accessible training opportunities. Again, we're looking to collaborate, not compete with anyone. Our goals. Okay, as an extension of the Pareto principle, you know, that 80-20, that wonderful 80-20 rule. By the way, Pareto, unfortunately, was adopted by one Sir Benito Mussolini, who...
Careful.
Well, hey. Although Pareto was certainly not a fascist or a supporter of Mussolini, nonetheless, the 80-20 rule is kind of what we're looking at. We believe that we can cover 80% of the problem domain with 20% of the effort, and that represents the statewide piece in totality. We believe the other 20% may be regional or local customization that might be needed, but that is going to require 80% of the effort because the payback is not as great. We want to develop and share curricula, capabilities, resources, and training, and set up a series of regional training centers that is going to answer the questions relative to area, state, regional, national, and even out into the international domain. So what we see here is the MSSC located in Richmond, and we have this thing called the MLETC, the Maritime Law Enforcement Training Center, is a function of the Port Police of Los Angeles, Port of LA, and we have entered into an agreement to share stuff right now, but our intent is that we're going to have a reasonably cohesive training program. Essentially, concept supported by the local captain of the port at Sector San Francisco, at the Area Maritime Security Center, the California Emergency Management Agency, all that. The key for us is that it was initially funded by a port security grant. I want to call your attention to, there are two security grants. One was in the total of $6.6 million. The other was for $525,000. But in order to get access to this $6.6 million, Chevron donated the land on which we are going to put our training facility. Let me repeat that. Chevron is donating the land on which to put this training facility. They saw value in the project and are very supportive. Committed to programmatic seed funding through 2014. So this is a little bit of the history of where we've gotten and how quickly we've gotten there, and it's been a long haul, but we certainly enjoy our relationship with Chevron and believe that it's very good for both the region and the state. Part of our facility will be at the historic Point Orient Wharf, and it will incorporate a small arms training range, currently operated by Halo 4 Chevron, and that will be covered. The other is where the main training facility, which will be up here in a reclamation area, an area outside of the refinery area proper, and it will house our administration building as well as the fire and hazardous materials props. For those of you that were in the service and know where Point Malati is, this is about 200 yards north. So this is some of the areas that we are anticipating delivering training. Tactical maritime law enforcement, marine fire and salvage, maritime-focused NIMS, SIMS, and ICS, and hazmat and environmental training. Pacific Gas and Electric has also approached us as a means of being able to do high-pressure gas main props as well. So these represent some of our target partners and clients. Pretty exhaustive. A lot of opportunities out there, and we're exploring each and every one of those to this day. So why do we need the MSSC? Well, we've got bad people out there, pirates, other terrorists that would like to do us harm. We try to eliminate some of the vulnerability, move it offshore if we can, but ultimately everything that's offshore has got to come back to the mainland anyway. So there are issues that we need to deal with, and the reality is that bad things happen in spite of what we do. So the Costa Concordia, we all know what that was. That was pretty much a disaster. Most disasters are a result of a failure of a chain of preventive actions. Failure of a chain of preventive actions. chances are when we're doing something like flying an aircraft or piloting a ship, we can afford to make a single isolated mistake because we will correct it and save ourselves. Unfortunately, when things get sloppy, bad things happen, as did with the Costa Concordia. There were safety violations, there were navigational violations, there were a lot of violations. So these are some of the results of the Costa Concordia disaster. It seems like all of our regulations with regard to operations are written in blood. There has to be a death or a serious injury or some environmental disaster before something ends up being done. All of these actually are already addressed in one way or another in regulation, but they simply were not followed. I will be glad to address any questions at the break or when my friend decides to query. Thank you very much.
John for executing on his vision. The last presenter, and I have a soft spot for firefighters since if you listen to the bio, I also manage the fire department at Boeing. And they were a great, motivated team. I loved working with them. So we have Rodney Slaughter from the California Fire Office of the State Fire Marshal, and he provides training and education for the fire services industry in a wide range of specialized subject areas. Mr. Slaughter began his fire services career in 1974 as a military and civilian firefighter for the United States Air Force, another great organization, with assignments in Florida, Hawaii, and California. Since 1988, Rodney has been employed as a Deputy State Fire Marshal in California, working on code enforcement, grant coordination, code development, and currently working with the Homeland Security Grant Program for the State Fire Training. Mr. Slaughter studied fire science at Honolulu Community College, terrible, and has a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from CSU Sacramento. Excellent.
There you go. Thank you very much.
It's all yours.
Thank you very much. So from my previous presenters, the world is suddenly a very dangerous place. Piracy, terrorism, there's a lot of things going on in the world that makes things really scary. I'm not here to relieve all of those fears, actually. I might actually compound them. As you heard from my biography, I have no background in marine stuff at all. Everything I know about the marine environment, I'm learning from CSU Maritime Academy and attending conferences like this. So I have no background. When I started my firefighter career in 1974 in the Air Force, we used to have a practice where we would foam the runway. We'd actually lay foam down on the runway, thousands of feet long, 6 inches deep, so when pilots in distress came in for a crash landing, they had something soft to land on. Here in the maritime industry, I haven't found anything that is as crazy as that, although I did meet a nice lady the other night at the VIP reception who explained to me to drain a boat of water, you go through the ship with a sledgehammer and you knock all the toilets off their foundation and the water will drain out. John, you're going to have to explain that to me because I'm not sure how that actually works. So I'm not here to relieve all your fears. I am here to talk about fire training. My expertise is as an instructional designer. I put funding together to get projects accomplished. We get them through an approval process both within the state and within the Department of Homeland Security. And that's what I'm here to talk about primarily. We're going to give you just a little bit of an overview of where we're at with maritime firefighting training. And my plan is basically to talk about the training mission for both CAL FIRE, the Office of the State Fire Marshal, and the fire service in general. Look at some of the hazards and risk here locally in terms of what we need to train up to, and then talk about some of the fire and marine courses that are being proposed and are being generated right now as we speak. While CAL FIRE is an all-risk, all-hazards organization, we've grown from the fact that our actual name is the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. This is disconcerting for many of you who work in the marine environment because we do forest fires. The director for CAL FIRE has command of thousands of firefighters with shovels and picks. They can build a fire line through a forest quicker than you can drive a ship through a canal. We have hundreds of pieces of apparatus and equipment, heavy equipment. We actually have a squadron of aircraft, but to my knowledge, CAL FIRE does not have a fireboat. We do have a mission on the coast. We do have CAL FIRE employees trained for surf rescue. That's about as close as we get. The Office of the State Fire Marshal is embedded into the mission of the CAL FIRE. Office of the State Fire Marshal merged with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection in the mid-90s. And the Fire Marshal's office basically provides fire protection engineering, enforcement, and education throughout the state of California. In terms of engineering, we adopt the building codes that all of you, subscribe to. We enforce those codes. We have a pipeline safety mission. We have an engineering mission, so things like sprinkler systems, sprinkler heads, fire alarm systems, fire extinguishers, fireworks all fall within the purview of the State Fire Marshal's office. Also, we have a division in the State Fire Marshal's office, State Fire Training. State Fire Training provides the certification training for all the firefighters in the state of California, including those that are employed by CAL FIRE. Okay, so we are the equivalent for law enforcement officers, like POST is for law enforcement officers for the fire service. And the mission for the fire service in general is to save lives and protect property. So recently, in fact, it was about this time last year, right after the Academy Awards, I was invited by Los Angeles Fire Department to go down and take a tour on their fireboat. This was great fun. What a great tour this was. But my jaw dropped as they toured me around the harbor or around the port and showed me what areas that they had to protect. Let's see if I can get the little pointer thing going. Oops, I think I turned it off, okay? Up in the upper right-hand corner, there's the fire station. Let's see if that's the pointer, right here. This is the fire station where the fireboats is housed. When this picture is taken, this is the USS Iowa that's parked right here. We've got 2 cruise ships. We've got a container ship across the way. You could just barely see the tank farm that's over in this area. They also have a very expensive marina with nice expensive boats in it. They have retail shopping along the shoreline. This is the island in the middle of the harbor between Long Beach and San Pedro. They have a prison there. We've got railroad tracks. We've got trucks coming through. My jaw dropped when I saw what the responsibility for LA City Fire Department is in terms of protecting this area with one little fireboat. I know that they share resources with LA County and Long Beach, and collectively they can mass a lot of resources together. But this is a huge area that needs to be protected, and a huge training responsibility for the fire service. So looking at some of those hazards and risks a little closer, I can see the life hazards in terms of the cruise ships. The Concordia was a classic example of the loss of life, needless loss of life at that. Shipboard fires, we've seen plenty of pictures of cruise ships and freighters traveling through the seas with smoke coming off the back of them for miles around. Cargo fires and freighters. Bulk storage fires, I was interested in the presentation earlier from Stockton Port. I was on their website here the other day. Extremely great website for Stockton. Fertilizer, bulk fertilizer scares me because when you put water on fertilizer, you actually make the problem worse. So, the kinds of bulk storage that we have, both in terms of the ships and offshore or onshore, are particularly vulnerable from my perspective. So water rescues, I had lunch with a gentleman here just recently who is proposing a course for rescue swimmer course and using the Coast Guard's standards and criteria for physical fitness to become a rescue swimmer, a new course that is being proposed. Hazards and mitigation, floating debris, fuel, chemicals. This is the tank farm in Richmond. I just imagine running fuel fires through the port, oil floats. You know, you've got a lot of potential for disaster. It also presents a unique challenge for the fire service, who is fairly expertise at employing emergency management operations. But we do need to look at our operations, how we navigate through these waterways, incident command and communications. How do we communicate inter-jurisdictionally? U.S. Coast Guard, law enforcement, the fire service, and any jurisdiction. This is huge. This is very problematic. And certainly something that needs to be trained up to at the same time. When I look at the ports that we have in California, each have their own unique missions, each have their own unique situations. So I do see somewhat of a statewide goal here to bring the fire service up to speed. And it's not just in terms of the ports, but also the harbors and the marinas that we have throughout the state of California. I think I saw a count of marinas, like 180 marinas in the state of California alone. So it's not just ports, it's harbors, it's marinas, it's fire prevention, it's firefighting. There's a lot of potential for training for the fire service in this environment. So where are we at today in terms of courses? That would be a good question. The Fire Marshal's Office right now has 3 courses in our catalog. River and Flood Rescue, Rescue Boat Operations, and that's not the big fireboat. These are like Zodiac crafts, typically. And Watercraft Operations, personal watercraft basically to use to help people out of the water. These types of classes are woefully inadequate for the type of training that departments like Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond need to have. These classes do not address the type of operation that you need to learn about when you're operating a fireboat of this size, or when you're trying to protect the risk of the magnitude that we just saw in that earlier picture. Leading the charge for the courses in California is actually LA Fire Department. I've been down to Los Angeles a couple of times. I've talked to both Long Beach Fire and Los Angeles City Fire Department, LA County Fire Department, but LA City Fire Department has really led the charge in terms of putting together courses that we've submitted to the Department of Homeland Security to get approved. And some of these courses are also going through the approval process here in California through the State Fire Marshal's Office, our Statewide Training Education Advisory Committee, and our State Board of Fire Services. So these courses, Fire Rescue Vessel Operator class, Tank Ship Inspection class, the Marine Incident Command System for land-based firefighters. The incident command system is unique. It should be pliable. It should be able to take in any kind of emergency operation. But the marine environment is unique in terms of vocabulary, in terms of resources. So having an incident command program for land-based firefighters is, I think, extremely important, as well as the hazardous materials for first responders in the operational maritime. So these are the courses that are being submitted. They're going through the approval process right now with the Department of Homeland Security. In summary, I think that what I've seen, and I've been working with CSU Maritime Academy for about 4 or 5 years now. I've recently been down to Long Beach and LA City Fire. I've been over to San Francisco and Oakland talking to the fire service as they're trying to come up with a program plan on how to address the training issue. The fire service can adapt and become a very powerful tool in protecting the ports, harbors, and marinas throughout California. We need to train to a national standard, and that's what we're driving for right now. Working with our partners, Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Coast Guard, Department of Transportation, our state partners, CalEMA, CSU Maritime Academy, CSU Sacramento works with the State Fire Marshal's Office in terms of curriculum development, and working with local and regional fire departments like Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Diego, San Francisco, and those other organizations. And I can't understate the fact that the industry, the maritime industry, Chevron Oil, and many of you that belong to businesses that are impacted by fires and emergencies, can also become part of our training solution at the same time. So if you're out web surfing, Office of the State Fire Marshal is pretty easy to find. You can go to the main link for the Office of the State Fire Marshal. There's a tab that takes you directly to the State Fire Training Office. I invite you to keep track of what we're doing in terms of the training requirements, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here at the conference today.
Thank you, Rodney. Well, I'm certainly impressed with the diversity and insightful presentations that we've had on very, very important topics. And so it's time to open up for questions. And if you don't, you run the risk of having me ask the questions. Yes, sir.
Hang on one second.
Got it. I have been told we only have 2 questions, and then we'll meet out in the hallway for my questions.
Well, I'll make this quick. I'm Chris Phillips with Pacific Maritime Magazine. My question is for Mr. Slaughter. In the last 20 years, almost every tugboat built on the West Coast has been equipped with a fire monitor. Most of those also have foam systems. Have you worked with private companies to help train their crews on how to operate those monitors in case of an emergency?
No, we haven't. The State Fire Marshal has not had the opportunity to do that, no.
Good, Chris, if I might, we are working on with the State Fire Marshal on a marine firefighting training curriculum, and that was one of the gap areas that we identified, and it would, hopefully, funding and everything supporting it, we will get to that.
Thank you for your question. Second question.
Hi, my name is Brian. My question is for Mr. Glauser. I hope I pronounced that right. In regards to the Portunus project that you're working on at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, if we were to see something like that come our way in the next 20 to 30 years, would there also be national security concerns for the Prince Rupert port and ports in Mexico in terms of getting WMDs into this country, or would they also have to kind of comply with that kind of an infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a, excuse me, that's actually a great question. It's a gamesmanship theory. If you're making it more difficult for terrorists to use one route of entry, their onus is to go a different route, okay? So the Portunus project actually partners with Canada and Mexico to extend that shield to some extent. So Canada would be a partner on the Pacific Northwest. Mexico would be a partner on the Gulf and Pacific Southwest.
I've been given the privilege of asking one question of the panel. My question is, the MTS is really operated by foreign interests. Is there an inherent risk in that model?
Sure.
There you go.
So,
best answer yet.
So here's the real quick answer on that for us. We have a lot of overseas projects that help those terminals and other ports inspect freight for us. We have identified many problems. We're not the only ones. There have been many problems identified. One is they don't turn the equipment on for fear of breaking it. The other is that our negotiations and agreements are with the port authorities, but the people who actually load the containers are not our friends. So, yes, that could be as far as that goes. As far as the shippers themselves, it's a business, and we actually rely on them to, on their self-interest.
Well, thank you. Again, please, a little gratitude for this great panel.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Cosmo. Thank you, everybody. A little scary stuff, but are we glad we have these people watching out for it, huh? Let's give another round of applause.